Yeah, all what they can do with aerodynamics, but of course, you know, suspension damage often doesn't get repaired in these GT3 cars, so your wheel will be set not straight then.
And that's going to be a nightmare to deal with. And in terms of a Formula 1 representation of that, Sebastian Vettel in Mexico would probably be the best understanding of a wheel alignment going awry. It's very, very similar when it comes to these GT3 vehicles. So I'd say probably looking at a finish right now for that Team Redline 4X machine, which is currently classified as being 45th overall in this event. And it's not really going to be the easiest thing in the world to get correct right now, as just looking at Williams Gym Esports number 44 and Data Opachak comfortably making his way around lap traffic. Chasing down at the moment Astro Gaming, Altus Esports and Dane Warren. Of course, Dane Warren joining away from All Star Motorsports, a team that folded over the last couple of weeks, and Altus has been known to make some pretty key signings. Have signed Maran Cholak and Vedran Krauj, who were absolutely fantastic here 1 year ago before their ultimate demise. It seems that Astro Gaming want to put themselves in the best position possible.
Yeah, that's especially with Altus Esports. Normally, Bo isn't here, so Bo Albert, he will be watching what his team is doing because he can't race this time around. Yeah, but you know, I already talked to him, so probably if they don't win or if they crash or something, they will put it on him because he isn't there. So I think they are fine.
I think they are fine, but Coanda now is starting to encroach on that top five with Joni Takkanen, as now Chris Lazarevich has to be a little bit wary in the Speed Cafe sponsored Evolution Racing Team machine. His words just leave me for a second there, ladies and gentlemen. But now up the hill, the mountain stretch, looking towards the next right-hander of Quarry Corner. Very difficult to go around the outside, but if anyone's going to try it, it is going to be Coanda and Joni Takkanen. Look for your braking points on the outside. How late do you dare go? The answer is late enough for both of them, and that's a good hold for the time being from Evolution Racing Team.
And you could perfectly see that Lazarevich, he was really trying to stay as most to the outside as he possibly can, to just doesn't give Takkanen any chance to get by here.
No chance at all, especially up the mountain. It is nigh on impossible to go and make that move. And actually, for a vehicle like Joni Takkanen's, which is the Coanda BMW, trying to get past that Mercedes, that grunt that is there from the Evolution Racing Team machine, two very, very different styles of vehicle, which makes it really difficult to work out where is the best place to make moves, because on the mountain, it is Coanda who have the advantage. On the straight, by all means, it's going to be the Mercedes that powers out.
Yeah, especially the BMW with a slightly shorter wheelbase is having a lot of advantages through the corners. But you know, the AMG, it's so wide. When you're driving behind it, you just see wing and rear. That's it.
Well, that's it, but it makes life maybe a little bit more difficult to go out there and to make the moves that maybe a lot of people have been expecting to see here, as pretty much nose to tail behind Jamie Fuchs' Apex Racing UK machine was what we were looking at as the 11 and the 26 decide it's time to have their own little bit of a battle, as Simacube Inex Racing Blue and PJ Sturgis goes out against that Zenith 24-hour team. And Zenith really have cropped up over the last year, maybe as a team that does sneak its way into races like these, not necessarily at the pinnacle or the peak of sim racing, but having a really strong showing here today. 9th position at the moment, looking at 8th. Zenith came up to make a statement and to make a name.
Yeah, they definitely do. What they made up already is 2 positions. They started on 11 and they want more, you know. They just have 11 hours and 19 minutes to go, and they want to make them count. And this is how it looks. You see them approaching the Ferrari here, so they can do great efforts of overtaking, but please don't do it in the section following now.
They could also put inside the vehicle, aside from Ricardo Rico, Javi Mugui and also Jose Lobo, have the ability to get in behind the wheel as things currently stand. So for the moment, Ricardo Rico just playing that patience game, just looking for maybe a chance to attack later down the line. But what we're seeing here from PJ Sturgis and that IRacing blue car is an option which not many people have chosen here, up inside top split here in this IRacing Bathurts 12 hours. It's a Ferrari, and it's not often that we've seen the Ferrari so far in this event, probably the newer addition in the GT3 lineup. But what is the Ferrari's ability compared to the Mercedes? Why would people choose that over, say, the Mercedes or the BMW?
The Ferrari is a pretty laid-back car. You know, the Mercedes is strong on the straights, the BMW is strong in the turns, and the Ferrari is in between there. It's balanced. It's not the fastest, and it's not the most stable, but it's somewhere in between those two.
A strong middle ground then for IRacing, and that's probably what I think drivers have to be a little bit wary about, as Joni Takkonen tried to go around the outside of Chris Lazarevich, who is slow off of Murray's corner. Here's the chance then to the outside for the opportunity to make that move, but not quite there for Takkonen, who maybe looks for an up and under attempt. And you can see how nimble and small that BMW is as they almost rub wheel arches heading up the mountain straight, and this is fantastic to see. But you are starting to see now just how difficult it is for some of these drivers to go and make a move, and this has been 3 corners maybe in the making, 2 straight around the outside of Quarry, and my goodness, that's a great move. Joni Takkonen, hats off. There's a top 5 at the moment.
Yeah, he really pulled that off, and I think also Chris here, he played it a little bit safer than he needed to, but well done, because you guys, you have 11 hours to go.
11 hours to go, and a fantastic move there from Joni Takkonen. The Racing Team Blue, though, hold the lead at the front of the field. Maximilian Venig behind the wheel of his GT3-based machine, his BMW. Maybe a little bit worse for wear on the right-hand side. Not quite surprising knowing the nature of this track, but it's worth noting as well, Maximilian Venig did so well at the Porsche Sim Racing Summit that you were at, Tobias, and Venig, arguably one of the stars in what is probably Germany's star-studded team, Pure Racing Team.
Yeah, true. I met some of the drivers at the Expo. I met them at the Porsche Leipzig event, and both Maximilian Venig and Banneke, they're both so laid back how they are as a person, and when you see them on track, they're like, you know, like these tech dogs that really bite for it, and that's actually what's happening right now. I mean, 6, almost 7 seconds, and a 1:59.704 by crossing the start-finish line. That's what I call a lap.
That is a great lap, and to see a comparison from Andrew Carl, just a 2-minute flat, which is a pretty good time by Carl's standards, as he's been pushing maybe a 1:59.9, his best. Venig in comparison 59.7 has just been that little notch above at the moment, as the number 16 machine once again does get going. And fans, there is a certain McLaren driver who is now behind the wheel and letting through a certain Joni Takkonen, and that of course is the new driver at McLaren, driving here for Redline, Lando Norris.
Yeah, Lando Norris, I've seen a room tour. His rig is pretty cool. Actually, he has 2 rigs to be precise, what I've seen, and doesn't help you with a damaged car if you're having a good rig though, but experience surely does.
Experience certainly does help. I've seen Lando Norris racing for a good couple of years here on the iRacing service, has been very much a fabled part of the open wheel scene, and has transitioned well into GT3 and whatever he really wants to get his hands on, really, I guess, for Lando Norris, who has a lot of traffic to be letting through in the early stages of this event. Such has been the damage to the vehicles, but right now there is a little bit more going on than that at the moment, as we get a little bit of a focus on the 333 machine if possible, because Dion Fiallo is now finding himself on the back of Zenith and IRacing, and look at the trains that will have to be dealt with in the next few moments in front. A lot of vehicles trying to get through, as now Florian Wojta finds himself past Josh Rogers' Coanda Porsche, but still Zenith, Thrustmaster, IRacing, all there, all looking, all waiting, all positions that could be got in the next 20 minutes or so before the stop.
Yeah, that's true. The stops will be coming in, and then we will see all the strategies. Yeah, being different, I say. You know, you have people double stinting tires, what I would do right now, because the track is still not too hot to do so, because we have 17 degrees track temp yet, because the sun is not shining on the track. So there's a chance, but I have to say, Lando Norris is pulling up into the pits again.
Yeah, and I think that vehicle is incredibly damaged, and that may just be that in terms of what they're capable of doing here today. Team Redline have not had the traditional luck in 24, 12, 6-hour events over the last couple of years. They're not really built, Tobias, as that sort of team. And yes, they made that big marquee lineup and said, oh, we've got Lando Norris, we've got Max Verstappen, we've got Nicky Katzberg, Shane Van Gisbergen, and Rudy Van Buren, Ben Cornette, etc., etc., Justin Rougier as well in their two teams. But really, when it has come to luck and it's come to these sorts of events, they've really not had anything over the last 2 years that they could shake a stick at. They've been great pretty much everywhere when it's come to a traditional championship. Or tools like this, it's not been there. It's been nigh on impossible for them to find a finish.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Especially, you know, you have everyone watching this, and of course it's different than sitting in a real car, because there you can be more focused. And since he's streaming as well, he's having focus everywhere. So that's totally different. As we see now, the cars arriving at another Porsche train.
Yeah, and more Porsche trains certainly have been the case, and it reminds you of what's happened in the Liquimoli Bathurst 12 hours, which happened just a week ago, and how they had their little bit of differences, the likes of the KTMs and maybe some of the McLarens that were there at the event, maybe not the quickest in the world, and it's that traffic factor which I think a lot of teams just need to be able to navigate and make a way past, which they haven't had maybe that ability to do. But a lot of teams, though, looking to try and have their battles and really give themselves a good accounting of what they're able to do. For example, this battle going on between the 27 and the 23 right now. MXS Racing 911 against the Vodafone Giants GT3, which is actually their Porsche effort. So Joaquin Hernandez against Javier Schwartzman. This one just a good little battle right now, and by looks of things, for the top 10 here in your Porsche category.
Yeah, and as Vodafone Giants, they are a lot behind. They are 22 in class, 30th overall. So they are fighting with the number 327 car for position.
They are, but just behind that, of course, the other battle which we were looking at is the other Vodafone Giants car, and of course Arturo Juncal having to make his way through a whole host of traffic at the moment. One of them is Alpine Eagle Racing, which he navigates easily. The other one is a lap ahead, DRS, Wave Italy AMG, and Maurizio Miccioni behind the wheel. So that Italian-based team has seen quite a few good drivers go through their mix, the likes of David Greco, Giuseppe Curry has been there from time to time, Marco Siniacono. Really some good names in Italian sim racing have found themselves at that level and have pushed themselves through. But just behind that, MXS Racing still holding off here, Joaquin Hernandez and that Vodafone Giants GT3 team. And really that Spanish-based outfit, big name, big sponsors behind it. Spanish sim racing has that, and has that oomph and that power behind it. But how often really does that translate, Tobias, to the overall sphere of sim racing? The answer is probably not as much as it should do, and something that I want to see, and a lot of other people do want to see more out of these Spanish-based teams.
Yeah, I really must admit that's the case, and I mean, you can have a name as big as Norris or Verstappen, but you have to prove yourself that you can survive the mountain.
You have to survive the mountain, and quite a few teams already have not at this stage, and they are just playing themselves into maybe a very long 12 hours worth of racing, and not many teams want to admit that, but they are in that sort of position where they can't do too much more. Still got that battle though, 8th, 9th and 10th going on in GT3 at the moment. PJ Sturgis, Ricardo Rico, Dion Fiallo with the 11, 26 and 333 machines respectively. Simicube Inex, Zenith 24 Hour and Thrustmaster Movano Racing. Up the hill for the moment, heading in towards the cutting and then up through the next next section of corners, the rights and lefts, Griffin's Mount, this right-hander before they head through Reed Park here, this next right-hander. Then you got that small kink left through the Frog Hollow. They will find themselves going another small kink left as they head through Solomon Park. McPhillamy Park follows straight after, and then already you find yourself on top of the hill and looking to try and find a very scary descent back down.
Yeah, you come here down through the S's, then afterwards the Dipper, and you can really see it's living up to its name here. Bam! And down Forest Elbow afterwards, which is a very, very nasty left turn.
It is that very nasty left turn. You brake a little bit earlier than maybe you think. A lot of trail braking goes into that section of track as well. It's so easy to have the back step out as the corner effectively falls away from you down the hill. It's almost, you could say, double off camber in a certain aspect, because you're losing it down the hill, you're losing it across as well, which makes braking so difficult, and you need such a big amount of mechanical grip available in the machines. But ultimately, no worries at all, as Chris Lazarevich becomes the first to dive down and decide to make a stop then of your leaders. 52 minutes only for Lazarevich and Evolution Racing Team, so maybe a strategy call, maybe it's something that Lazarevich wasn't comfortable with over the last couple of laps, but Evolution Racing Team are bold. They're making the first call.
Yeah, and everyone will be looking now where they come out, because with all the traffic now disappearing all on the track, I mean, I don't know if we have a track map, but it would look pretty interesting, I guess. It
would look very interesting indeed, as Chris Lazarevich changes drivers to Jamie McKnight behind the wheel. McKnight, someone who has made a lot of emphasis over in terms of Australian sim racing, of course, partially finds himself with a lot of work over with West End Mazda and the like, and has put a lot of sponsorship effort actually into sim racing, and is someone who is a massive advocate for that moving forward. But Jamie McKnight behind the wheel, and now starting to get his next stint going, and really just about logging laps in the early stages. New car, maybe a little bit different to what you're expecting conditions wise, tyre temperatures, tyre pressures wise, maybe having to make a little bit of adjustments here and there in the early goings.
Yeah, that's, you know, with the pit stops now, that's interesting, but they're taking repairs as well, I think.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised, because of the fact that this is going to be a very, very difficult track to get around cleanly, and if they have to take repairs, then it's a long, long stop. It did look a little bit early for my liking there from that Evolution Racing Team machine. They shouldn't be taking forever and 3 years to get in behind the wheel and get going, but Jamie McKnight has been sat down on pit road for a very substantial amount of time, and that Evolution Racing Team machine could be there a little while longer. On pit road now is the MXS Racing 911 Porsche, which is, I believe, about to enter the box right towards the very end in these double stack pit boxes that they have. Their pit stop will look to start from one of the first Porsche stops that we're seeing today.
Yeah, and who was in the pits for a very long time before the race after Kirchhoff lost it down the S's with a very big hit in the wall, engine repair and so on, is the number 16 car of Team Redline 4X. Car looks... he lost it just again. The engine has just blown again, and I think that is it. They have to tow back, because that looks like the engine is completely out.
Mine engine is kaput, and I think that for Team Redline is an hour that they will now have to sit repairing that engine, and effectively goodbye Redline, I believe, over the course of this one. Nothing you can do. A vehicle which did not want to look like it wanted to be driven, and you can't really blame Lando Norris in that situation. The vehicle snapped on him, the engine went, and once the engine's gone, he was basically passenger.
Yeah,
oh, hello. Sorry, that's Naoya Nagai. Flat 6 Racing's 87 is around again. This time it's at the cutting, and it's a blind pass, the cutting at that as well, and has been there for a fairly substantial amount of time. Lost it on exit, and finally just about gets it going.
Oh, I see why the engine blew. Sorry, he made a mistake downshifting. he shifted down because I've seen the car downshift to first, and then it sounded like he was just releasing the clutch. I don't know why he used the clutch anyway, because GT3 cars don't need them in the drive. So then, of course, the car snapped because he was in first instead of second.
Oof. Just like that, it hurts, and that is probably that. But we've seen a couple of incidents now starting to creep into drivers' gains, and once more, another big incident then in the opening hours worth of proceedings. Your top 8 though, as things stand in both categories. Pure Racing Team holds the lead, 8.2 seconds now for Maximilian Wenig and Pure Racing Team Blue, ahead of Logitech G Altus Esports and the anchor driver, you could say, Mr. Reliable, Andrew Carl, behind the wheel for them. Vendaval Sim Racing White and Robin Estson find themselves in third, just 5 seconds back of that, with Joni Takkanen in fourth position, having just got by Ethan Grigg Golt's Evolution Racing Team 226. Coanda are the team on the move at the moment. Williams Gym Esports find themselves in 6th place, with Simicube Inex Racing in 7th, holding off a train which involves Zenith 24 Hours in 8th, and let's add one more in just for a bit of luck. Crossmaster Movano Racing in 9th position. Tobias, you've been keeping an eye, of course, on those fantastic Porsches.
Yeah, especially on those who are still running. That's your top 8. With Williams Esports Chill Blast, Lauren Heinrich at the wheel, your current leader, with a 13-second gap to the next Porsche car. But of course, you see the Ferrari traffic coming from behind, letting him through. Very well done. Yeah, P2 then is VR Esquadra SimSport 1. Joshua K. Rogers is driving that one. Vanderbilt Sim Racing Yellow with Joshua W. Anderson on P3. The Williams Esports Razor car with Alexander Voss is then on P4, followed by Fluke 49 from the Apex Racing UK team, of course, with the car number 49. 33 seconds of a gap to the leader. And in P6, one of the longest names in the iRacing history, I guess, is the Porsche Basel by Zorg Rennsport Esports team, and I think there's something with Pro behind. They're on P6, followed by Alpine Eagle Racing on P7 and Vodafone Giants GT3 on P8 with 2 minutes, so that's almost a lap of a gap to the leader.
Almost a minute's gap, but so we're talking about Alpine Eagle Racing just for a moment. No gaps in their lettering. They will be the first to tell you that there's no gaps in our name. They are very firm. Martin Asher is behind the wheel, and what he does in terms of some livery designs, Asher Designs, probably out there as one of the great livery designers out there. Teams like SimRC.de, for example, not racing this top split, they have an absolutely fantastic livery thanks to Asher Designs. Asher Designs, probably in German sim racing, is the go-to name, Tobias, when it comes to that livery design.
Yeah, I mean, I see literally almost like every second team is going there, so they're doing a great job with these liveries.
They absolutely are, and they are doing a pretty sterling job at the moment in terms of where they started, 43rd up to 29th overall. That is a gain of 14 positions so far in the early stage of this one. A few teams that have retired from this event include NSH Racing Team, likes of Team 84, Vendaval Sim Racing Black, Pure Racing Team Yellow. Of course, we've seen what's happened to Team Redline's 4X Machine. Silver Surfer as number 17 has run into a lot of issues here today, and so many more that have fallen by the wayside in opening hours worth of driving. But right now we've got another little battle on our hands, as I believe it is Thrustmaster by TX3 who were looking to scrap it out with Team Rennsport Online, but they have just had a horrible dose of traffic, which has allowed Simicube Inex Racing Black to pounce back in here with William Levesque, and I'm not sure how much Arthur LaHope is going to be really able to stop this, as I believe it is going to be Frenchman against Quebec French-Canadian.
So that is, it's a little bit looks like we're having a little story of history coming up, but this is not the point here. Here it's the story of the 12th hour of Bathurst, and did that lapping look a little bit cheesy?
a little bit there as Levesque really did struggle to get around that Porsche, and I believe that was the Greek-based Porsche car. I believe I'm mistaken though, because it was actually, yes it was, sorry, Hellenic Racing Blue, their second, or their Porsche entry that they have there. Andy Pers behind the wheel, not necessarily a Greek driver himself, but part of the team. But really there, Hellenic just didn't really find much room at all, as threading the needle there was Arthur Lahaut, getting past leader Laurent Heinrich, who is looking to lap Joaquin Hernandez, and all the waiting that goes along around it as well. Sometimes it is very difficult to get past leading category vehicles, Tobias, because you look at what they want to do with their events. It's about them trying to dictate the flow of traffic to suit their needs as a leader, compared to being told where they need to go, which is often where issues arise.
Yeah, that's true. What I learned from multi-class racing, especially with the Le Mans cars, where there's the LMP1, who is a lot faster than the GTE car is. Stay on your line, I will find a way around, and if I'm next to you, we should work together. And this is actually what they have to do, especially on the top part of the mountain, where now the sun is finally coming out and can actually, blind the drivers going downhill. I've seen it in the real Bathurst 12-hour race just a week ago. When the sun comes up, you don't see anything going down the S's.
No, you certainly don't. Just looking right now, Maximilian Venig, your race leader, did just come down for a pit stop. Come in and out and away again. Andrew Carl has come down in for Logitech G Altus Esports. Robin Esterson, who's on the lane now for Vendaval Sim Racing White. Virus Quantus Sim Sport hit the lane. Evolution Racing Team hits the lane. So does Williams Jim. Zenith stays out very crucially and goes longer than anyone else. But the pit stop window has been hit very firmly at the moment for your GT3 vehicles, and it's a long wait as out and away comes Marco Asidiacono in the number 10. See going by Lauren Heinrich, waiting still for the vehicle of Pure Racing Team Blue, Maximilian Venig, who breezes on by and looks to retain the net race lead.
Yeah, I mean, it looks awesome on the timing screen. Everyone is jumping up and down right here. And if you are interested into timing pretty quickly, then visit racespot.tv/live, where you can follow around all the action. A little bit more statistical than here on the stream. So get it up next on the screen next to you and follow along. And now finally it's sorted a little bit. The only one not to have pitted yet from the GT3, that is the 26th of Senate, 24 hours, Ricardo Rico. They are in the lead at the moment till they get to the pits, and Williams Jim Esports, Dado Opachak, they haven't pitted either.
No, they haven't. They're the only two who have not come down in yet and made that first pit stop, and being able to go longer and to save that fuel has been very vital to the pair of them, especially to that Zenith 24-hour effort, going that lap longer. Keep totaling that up on the hour. 11 laps saved come the end of this event. That could really come in handy on that last stop, especially here, Tobias, if you have to put 11 less laps worth of fuel in the car.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you can calculate through now till the end, but everything can change and mix up as we know. And now they're heading into the pits, as you can see right here. That's Ricardo Rico. So let's see if he stays in the car for another stint. And from the stop times, what I'm seeing is that everyone double stints tires up to P13.
Everyone looking to get a second stint out of the tires. The track conditions are incredibly cold, and I'm not surprised that drivers are looking to get another stint run on those rubbers that they have, as there will be a driver change as Jose Lobo will get behind the wheel for that Zenith 24-hour team, as through will go Pure Racing Team Blue to re-inherit that race lead. But let's look at where Inex Blue and Thrustmaster Movano are in comparison. PJ Sturgis is just heading down the hill at the moment through to the Forest Elbow. Dion Fiallo, though, who had a much quicker pit stop, mind you, and probably looking to go on the alternative strategy, if that is anything to go by, now making his way to the final corner out on circuit. Zenith have been waiting for a pretty long time at this point, and for the time being at least. Through will go that Thrustmaster Movano machine, so that very clearly to me looks like a shorter stop there, Tobias, as now Zenith wait to get released.
Yeah, 1 minute now on the clock for Zenith. It looks like they are changing tires, because the normal tire change time, also fuel and tires, is about 1 minute and 15 to 19, and there they go, 1 minute 11 this time around. They are out, or 1 minute 9.9 if you got it here precisely. So that means for them, they are a little bit further back than before, but it might pay out in the end, you never know.
It may just pay out in the end, and they may just be happy about it, but look at who they've got just behind them. It's the Williams Jim Sports 44 and Moreno Sirica behind the wheel of that 5. They are nose to tail on track. It is the battle for position at the moment, and Moreno Sirica, well, there's the carrot on the stick. It's time to go and eat a carrot.
What?
Carrots on the stick. It's a dangling.
Oh, yeah, I got it right now, sorry. I was looking at the beautiful livery of that car, over black and yellow, which I think is pretty fitting to the BMW, as it stings like a little bee through the top section of the mountain.
It certainly does. That yellow and black, so synonymous with the former Jim Racing colours. Williams Jim Jr. still adopting the yellow and black designs. Of course, both teams with heavy influence from the former, or shall I say still current, Jim manager Javier Guerrera, who is also now the Williams Esports team competition manager at the moment. But let's stay on board then with this number 5 battle, as this BMW looks to try and find a way past the Zenith 24H Mercedes. Let's go on board then with a certain Moreno Sirica and take you for the first time here this afternoon. Racebot TV, fan immersion. mistake. Here comes the chance for Moreno Sirica, but ultimately backs out of it into Hell's Corner, turn number 1, out on track. So not able to get that opportunity to get past Jose Lobo and the Zenith 24H machine. The battle for 12th position overall out on circuit. The sun is rising here at Mount Panorama Circuit as in-game time now hits 7 o'clock in the morning as we look to head on towards hour 2 here on the iRacing Esports Network. If you have not already, make sure that you like and subscribe right now to get so much more than just this. Over $300,000 worth of prizes are coming in for World Championships this year. It's the biggest year that iRacing probably has ever had when it's come to esports. Make sure that you check in and watch some of the best races in the world. The Martin Kroenkes, the Maximilian Benekes, the Gregor Hutus, and all the rest look to hit themselves through. The likes of Real Falla, for example, the likes of Keegan Leahy, Ryan Loser, all the rest of it, as the likes of, say, the NASCAR Peak Anti-Freeze Series kicks off in just a week's time at Daytona. So, your racing team out at the front of the field at the moment and having a pretty strong advantage of about 7 seconds to work with at the moment. But let's talk about this then just for the moment here, Tobias, and that is the fact that you got Altus Esports here just 7 seconds back, just keeping pure honest, as I do believe I have got the date ever so slightly wrong. It will be Tuesday for the eNASCAR Peak Anti-Freeze Series, of course, but right now Logitech G Altus Esports 7 seconds back. I think they take that from here.
Yeah, they take that from here if they don't end in the rear of a Porsche. Traffic is always a thing, but traffic going to Skyline, going through the S's, that's another story.
It is very much another story, and that's the last place that you want to see any traffic, as just in front of them is the DRS Wave Italy AMG machine of Marco Sidiacono behind the wheel. So that will be the next thing to try and work along and deal with. And the last thing that I think any driver wants to try and deal with is traffic of your own class, because that is notoriously the most difficult thing to get around.
Yeah, that's that's true. That's definitely true. Sorry for losing it.
It's all right, man. It's all right. But we have seen a few drivers run into issues, struggle in the early goings. We have also been looking at what has been going on in the Porsche category over the last few laps or so. And the pit stop window has just come and gone in the opening stages of this one. It is still Williams Esports Chill Blast who find themselves up the front with Laurent Heinrich behind the wheel of the number 2. Coanda now find themselves in second with Josh Rogers now there, and with a pretty sizable gap to that as well over Williams Esports Razor, who are in third with Alexander Voss. Fourth position at the moment is Vendaval Sim Racing Yellow, maybe a few seconds back of that. This pit stop window has just shaken things up a little bit, but if anyone's going to start clawing this one back, it's the number 1 Coanda machine. Why, you ask? Because it is strategy, and the wacky and the wonderful strategy that has so often put Coanda right at the top, doing things that maybe nobody expects anyone to do.
Yeah, but what I'm missing now is the P6 of the Porsche Cup. That's the Porsche Basel by Zorg Esports. I don't know where this car is. It looks like they had the driver had a problem with his connection.
Technical issue then maybe coming in for Luis Glania, sorry, and that could be all she wrote for the moment for the number 14. And I think it very much is the 5 and the 197 have their own little scrap at the moment, and this is a really big scrap right now. Cedric Nebelshek's just got in behind the wheel of the Team RSO 197. There's Williams Jim, who have encroached on the rear of it. Moreno Sirica there. Redface Racing has tried to stay out of the way of this all, but this little battle going on as Zenith have managed to pull away over the course of the last couple of laps. Williams Jim have lost the position to RSO, and Nebelshek is on a charge to find Zenith once again.
Yeah, but Ziricha, he just backed off a little bit before that turn, what we've just seen after the mountain straight, because he didn't want to do the outside thingy that we've seen for quite some movements already today. So he will stick behind that Mercedes of Team RSO with Cedric Nebelsieg, who is a very stable and constant driver, but you have the typical bonnet damage of the Mercedes if you're taking curbs too hard.
Exactly, and those curbs are lethal from time to time. Around here at Mount Panorama, just take the Chase's curb, how high and how difficult that one can be if you are not too careful about how you are racing. But of course, it's not just these drivers here who are proving themselves in these teams. Up and down iRacing right now, so many teams, and even those who try to attempt the earlier Australian split time 12-hour events, all of them have been pushing to try and get themselves to the end, and some of the biggest streamers out there in terms of professional sim racing have found themselves in and around racing action. For example, you can talk about Jimmy Broadbent, the work that he's been doing. You've got Tiamat Marduk giving his go of the 12 hours. You've also got the likes of, say, Marcus Ambrose, who is probably more synonymous with the real world side of racing. He's doing his own version of the Bathurst 12 hours. It is very much clear to see today that Bathurst has become the big conglomeration of everybody wants to showcase what they're all about, Tobias.
Yeah, especially V8's driver like Shane van Gisbergen, like Ambrose. They know Bathurst. For example, Gisbergen, he did a lot of years now in the V8 supercars. He's had a lot of starts in Bathurst, in the 12 hours of Bathurst with GT3 cars by the likes of McLaren's and Mercedes's. I mean, he's had a blast in the real race, getting back to P4.
He has had a fantastic little blast in his own racing that he did 1 week ago, and how much pressure he puts in. But let's look at RSO once again, because they have very quickly caught Zenith's 24-hour effort, and just like that, they now become the ones on the bubble, under pressure up through McPhillamy Park, and that fantastic gravel trap on the outside, certainly not a Herman Tilke design by any stretch of the imagination. Down the hill they head in through the lefts and the rights, through the Big Dipper, maybe a little bit wider there, that line by Zenith comparatively to Rennsports Online, who are a lot more tucked in and precise with their alignments. But it's about this runoff of the Forest Elbow that makes all the difference. It doesn't matter how messy you make it in different areas of that downhill section. It's now about how this charge happens to bias that becomes most crucial.
Yep, as we go through the kink in about a second. There we go. You take all the tarmac that you can get. Get this right-hander correct to position yourself perfectly for this left-right chicane here.
And that left-right chicane sometimes can be pushed a little bit harder than many people expect it can do, and that often does lead to a lot of drivers pushing a little bit harder than needs to, as Murray's Corner does become that push a little bit harder than needs to for Jose Lobo. Pressure cooker told, and it seems that there are two things that happen when you apply pressure. Either you crumble or you turn into diamonds. For Zenith, they crumbled.
Yep, they crumbled pretty quickly, but luckily they did on this part of the track, because you don't want to have problems or issues with nervosity or with your car on the top of the mountain. As we see, they're trying to get the position back, but this won't happen here. Now they are prone to the attack from the gym car behind.
They are, but crucially they have that advantage through the top speed sections, but it's through this tight and twisty where it gets a little bit more dangerous, shall we say, for Zenith in comparison to Williams Jim Esports. But just look a little bit further down the road as well. A little battle starting to happen for 9th place overall. This is SimCube Inex Racing Blue against Hellenic Racing's 88 machine. Nestoras Kiosklu versus PJ Sturgis. And for the moment, we say PJ Sturgis probably one of the best all-rounders you find out there in sim racing. He was the guy who did Formula 1 and NASCAR at the same time, and GT3. And if he had his way, he'd do all the dirt stuff as well. PJ Sturgis, arguably the greatest all-rounder, someone who can definitely do it all, and not many drivers can. But what he'll do right now is pull himself down to the inside against Nestoras Kiosklu, and Kiosklu will happily give him the position. Not necessarily happily, but he'll give him the position nevertheless.
Yeah, as I said before, like in the beginning of the race, side by side through the kink is not the perfect or ideal situation that you would like to find yourself.
No, not at all. I think that a lot of drivers don't want to be on the outside, which suddenly turns to the inside. A lot of pressure comes into that 2-into-1 mentality, kink right, which so many drivers have gotten wrong over the years. So many drivers have to be careful about getting wrong. Even now, and every single overtake has to be manufactured and absolutely pinpoint for a lot of reasons. And I think that a lot of drivers sometimes do take for granted the ability to overtake in maybe a few lower splits. And for those who are trying to learn and to understand how to get better as a driver, what necessarily is the biggest tip about overtaking, which basically changes the IRacing and the safety rating so drastically in the way that you look to attempt an overtake and how to make that overtake as well.
Talking about overtaking, I think I've just seen a Ferrari crash on the start-finish straight. It was it was not the 43 Altus Esports car.
Oh, that's the Astro 8.
It was the Astro Gaming Altus Esports car, with number 83, who had issues just. Oh man, he did not only a 3-point reverse. Oh, that took a long time to get that car around.
It did. Got contact with the X5 racing machine of Eric New, and for Dane Warren, the savant, some may say, of sim racing, it took forever and 3 years, and actually the amount that he had to go backwards on circuit to try and get that vehicle turned around, he is a very lucky lad not to be disqualified for going the wrong way. Dane Warren getting very, very lucky, as also a crash has just come in for the Zenith 24-hour machine as well. Oh, it's all starting to kick off here in GT3. Look at that number, 26. Absolutely no hood at all, and a massively exposed engine getting a lot of natural cooling.
Yeah, talking about naturally aspirated cars, I think this is the most obvious way to do it, even though it's not intended by the engineers. As we have a look into the replay of the 26 car, so what happened exactly here? Let's see. It looks good in my opinion. Oh, the RSO car lost it.
Wow. So a chain reaction then as Rennsport Online ran themselves into their own troubles, and Cedric Lebelchek, but ultimately taking the biggest hit, the brunt, or the brunt of the force, sorry, was that Zenith 24H machine, and is one which has allowed Simicube, Inex and Glacier to both make ways through. So that's going to be really hurting Zenith, and they'll now have to deal with that damage for as long as it takes for their next stop, unless they want to try and run things off of strategy, which I don't think a lot of drivers maybe want to do in this situation. But again, it happens just like that. Here at the mountain, it's a track which does not forgive, does not forget. Very easily you can run yourself into trouble, especially with half of the lap being no runoff area at all. Just like that, you can have an incident. It may not even be your fault, but bang, that's endurance racing.
Yeah, hashtag this is endurance is a very well-known hashtag, I guess. But what is also very well known, that is our live timing. This is this time available on the racebot.tv/live. There you can follow along everything, what happens. You see, of course, the gaps you see when someone goes into the pits. You see when there are yellow flags locally. So, yeah, you can keep up with everything what is not on screen at the moment.
Certainly can. Battle going on though in your Porsches is for the final spots on the podium. You are seeing right now as Joshua Anderson for Vendaval Sim Racing Yellow tries to hunt down Alexander Voss, who has lost a good 0.8 of a second over the course of that last lap. 8/7 of a second there or thereabouts. But Vendaval are now starting to find themselves maybe a little bit of pace, pushing all the way to the wall through Solomon Park, as now I believe that's Dane Warren who's going to now next try and find a way through, but he will have to wait all the way through this downhill section. No chances to go and make a fantastic move just yet, but for the time being, it's now about patience. Don't rush your way over towards the opponent in front of you. Let them come to you, even if it's a 10th, a 100th, a 1,000th at a time. A gain is a gain for a lot of these drivers here, Tobias, and that's sometimes something that is often forgotten when it comes to racing.
Yeah, it's especially in endurance racing, it's the patience which is more important. I mean, of course, if you've got a sprint race of 60 minutes, everything counts. You don't want to let the other guy get away, but you know, you have 10.5 hours. It's not even bright sunshine yet. The sun is still rising. We are having 7:15 a.m. in sim time right now, so there is a lot of time and a lot of things to happen yet.
It certainly is, and one of those things is that Dane Warren is not having much help trying to get by, and I wonder if it's top speed that maybe Dane is starting to struggle with here and trying to get by, because there was maybe a little bit of damage on the Ferrari, but the Porsche is just out-muscling here, and it's very clear that it's out-muscling here as Josh Anderson is effectively just floating away through and trying to desperately stay with Alexander Voss, who was a full, get this, 200ths of a second slower that last time by. You could probably say a light year away if you want to be really pedantic about that, but they have really pushed hard over this last lap, and they are effectively identical. It's just pushing ever so slightly wide. There was Voss coming out of the cutting.
I mean, it does look good in my opinion, but you know, the Ferrari, he is very impatient as it looks.
Very impatient indeed, as a good push there through Solomon Park into McPhillamy then for their 42nd lap. It's worth of racing that we've seen pushed a little bit wide, and that might be a ticket for Dane Warren. It is, and he'll get a ticket to ride, and he won't care. He'll just go straight on by and get himself through, as just behind there's the other Logitech G Altus eSports machine of Andrew Carl, who will see his brand new teammate Dane Warren looking a little bit worse for wear in terms of this one. So just a little something to keep an eye on as this race progresses. But what we have seen is a lot of good battling out on track. A lot of drivers just looking to find themselves in that position to really push, and a lot of teams out there who maybe have been pushing. And one thing that I have noticed really as we keep an eye on the 57 and the 46 battling, this is Glacier versus Simicue. A lot of teams haven't really found themselves silly names, as maybe there has been in the past. There used to be a whole plethora, Tobias, of names of teams, such as the Will Vincent fan club, We Like Pizza and stuff, and teams like that, which have often found themselves a way through. Now that sim racing is getting more and more competitive and more serious at the top level, these big events, which used to be that big culmination of have a bit of fun, suddenly this becomes really serious business, and you really don't see too many teams like that, as Jari Latari is looking to try and find a way past William Levesque.
Yeah, what you said is absolutely true. I mean, you know, the good guys, the very good guys in these teams who pulled up the top splits, yeah, they're getting gathered by all these professional sim racing teams like Williams Esports, like Williams Jim's Esports, like the Sorg Rennsport Esports. You know, all these teams who already have a name in real racing coming here, or all these dedicated sim racing teams like the Team Redline or Thrustmaster by TX3. They are taking all the good racers, and especially Kwanda. I mean, you talked about it. And a while ago, with Kwanda, there are a lot of people racing, and especially those guys coming from real racing, like Sage Karam, of course. He is with the Kwanda guys today.
He is, as he was at Daytona. Again, special guest, not necessarily signed to BRS Kwanda Sim Sport, but someone who was at the Porsche Sim Racing Summit, made a very strong connection with the Kwanda boys and what they were able to do, and as such has been picked up for Daytona and picked up as well here for this 12 hours of Bathurst race. Sage Karam, of course, IndyCar driver, has certainly shown what he is made of. But here comes Latari, that BMW finding quite a bit of pace, looking for the brakes, but not quite able to get late compared to William Levesque and that Simicube Inex Racing Black Machine. An Inex team which maybe some say isn't the same as it was maybe a couple of years ago when it was changing the world, with the likes of Yoni Tamala and Isaac Price behind the wheel, but still certainly has a lot of firepower there. Maybe not battling where they want to be at this stage in 14th position, but still they are both closing down Rennsport Online, and Cedric Nobelshek just in front of them.
Yep, he got the RSO car running, so they had pretty luck with the crash before. That it didn't ruin the suspension. Of course, you have quite damage, especially on the aerodynamic parts of that car. A little bit, you see the bonnet is crumbled the front. It doesn't look that healthy anymore, but it still gets itself going on the top of the mountain. But he is having to defend now very, very hard on the straight.
He is having to defend hard, and quite hard at that indeed, as now the draft comes into play down the hill as well, as William Levesque smashes over 260 Ks, back up and over the rise, down to the inside, and looking to try and pick one up heavy over the inside curve, but gets way clear before he hits his braking points, and just like that, it seems that Nebelshek drops one and could potentially drop two here to the Glacier Racing duo, as Jari Latari and JJ Newlander's team will look to try and push forward a little wide on the exit, though. You've got to be careful of that, as now Levesque gives Nebelshek the chance to come straight back at him in through Hell's Corner turn number one. Side by side they'll go. A lot of respect there in terms of room given, but now this is maybe the best chance the BMW's had in a very long time.
Yeah, it's definitely true. Having switching the draft now, going 3 wide on the mountain straight.
Go on, guys, this is hour and a half in. We're not 11 hours 58, but they back out of it to RSO around the outside. 2 for 1 special. That's how you overtake in a BMW. And Jari Latari just proving how he's good, as Nebelshek comes straight back at Levesque, and Inex end up going nowhere.
What a move here from Latari. I mean, this is the bravest one that actually worked we've seen so far in the race. And remember, we're only 1.5 hours in, but we already had a lot of questions running around in the chat, and I can say, no, it will not rain.
No, it won't rain just yet. Not part of the iRacing service, but something that has been looked at in potential for the future. We have no updates when that will be. Replay of what happened though with this Latari pass, and it is absolutely majestic around the outside, and you could see how he planned that move a lap in advance. He knew that he could close up a certain amount in the draft, but he did need that little bit of a help. Just needed that small flint spark which ignited the bonfire, and that's what we just saw there with Glacier, because Jari Latari saw them go too wide, give each other a lot of room, maybe sacrifice the corner exit speed. Oh, hello, here's a chance. I'm small in a very light and nimble car, as Nebelshek loses the position to William Levesque into the chase. Might as well use it, might as well go 3 wide, see where it takes us, and ultimately 2 positions.
Yeah, you see the Ferrari being stuck on the inside line on the curb. He couldn't get the power as much down as he wanted to, and this is how it happens. And now you see Nebelshek again trying to get the position back on the outside. Oh, that won't work. CRISPR's move trying here, but this exit looks pretty good, and now he's trying again on the left side. Yes,
he's certainly trying, and I think they've got to be just a little bit cautious, as you can see just a slight overlap now starting to favour Rennsport Online, and now all of a sudden Inex still holding that inside. They've lost it once from that position, but they won't lose it again, and they'll make sure of that. They hold on to the position in a very good show of defence by William Levesque. Nebelshek came out to fight, and he is showcasing that his willingness to fight is still there. Just a little bit further in front of that battle going on for 8th position. It's the other Inex car now involved in a scrap, and this one is with Thrustmaster by TX3 and Arthur Lahoque in the French team. Of course, they've got a few drivers that they can put inside that number 3 vehicle. One is Thibaut Calzabon, who has arguably been the standout star of late 2018, but they also have picked up from Race Clutch Johan Hart, who I think it's safe to say, Tobias, didn't have the nicest of breakups over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue against that one, but you've seen Lahoque. He's struggling a little bit on the top part of the mountain, and I mean, this is the most important part of this track.
It is, and if you're struggling on top of the mountain, how are you going to make your overtakes when it comes to the 2 big long straights? It's the really big catch-22 with a lot of drivers, and how do you set up for this circuit? Because you need to set up for the top speed to have the opportunity to overtake, but at the same time, you need to set up for the mountain as well, as Lahoque runs a little bit wide coming out of Hell's Corner. You need to make sure that you're able, Tobias, to effectively turn through the downhill twisty section where most of the time actually on this lap is probably made up.
Yeah, I mean, when you're training on your own, it's one thing, but you really need to do the open practices to see how does your car behave with traffic. Because with traffic you have different lines, you have different speeds, and you have, more importantly, different angles of attack towards a turn, towards an apex. And as we've seen before, that can mix up everything.
It certainly can mix up so much, and I think a lot of drivers know that they have to do a lot of practicing, not just when it comes to just getting the time in against other opponents, but actually the weather, the time of day, the temperature conditions. Is it overcast? Is it partially cloudy? Is it bright blaring sunshine? It's those sorts of things, the track temperature changes, that they have to practice. And actually I'd probably say the biggest meta change since the new dynamic track system came in about a couple of years ago, and I think probably will be the biggest danger to sim racing until, or on iRacing, until rain decides to come in, which we know, according to the IRacing forums, has been discussed and is being planned for. Nothing official though as of yet, it has to be stated.
I mean, I've seen, you remember the chaos they had in Daytona, right? 2 or 3 weeks ago with the rain. And somebody told Anna that at iRacing we want rain, and Steve Myers literally answered that with, why do you guys want so much rain? It doesn't even look remotely fun. So, you know, you have people in there who, I mean, in America, I don't know, I was a lot more with European racing years ago, and there we were used to running in rain, of course, but in the Sports Car Challenge, for example, a longer time ago, like 4 or 5 years, they would have red flagged that race way earlier.
They certainly would have done, and no surprises that they would have red flagged that race a little bit earlier. Rain on an oval is notoriously difficult from time to time, as the battle for P4 overall now starts to take shape, because a little bit of trouble for traffic for Coanda. It's allowed Joni Takkanen to be closed back in by Ethan Griggolt and Evolution Racing Team 226 machine. So now all of a sudden, that inroading that Coanda has been doing, suddenly they have turned into the ones being eroded into, as Ethan Griggolt probably finds a setup in that Mercedes that they've got, which probably is responding better to the climbing track conditions, up to 19 degrees now on the track, but crucially is responding to a bit of sunlight.
Yeah, it is. The sunlight is coming up. It's partly cloudy, of course, today, so that helps them a little bit. Imagine if there were no clouds at all, the track temp would rise very, very high. And what is also very, very high is the art of driving here on this track, because you really need to do so, otherwise stuff will happen to you as it did for a lot of other drivers before. I mean, we started with 52 cars on the grid. Some of them are driving again, like Lando Norris, who is trying it again on track after being 44 minutes in the pits, after being 20 minutes or something in the pits, after Kirchhoff lost it in the first few laps.
Yep, and managing to get back out and going and trying to pick up a couple of positions in terms of the closest that they can get to in terms of drivers who are running out on track. Trans-Tasman Racing is probably their closest rival, who are 20 laps in the distance at the moment. Emily Jones, Emery behind the wheel, probably one of the bigger Twitch streamers out there, and probably the leading female driver out there in sim racing at the moment. And we do have to talk about female drivers who actually have pushed the boundaries out there in terms of sim racing. It's not just this male-dominated sport. Of course, you've got those like Emily Jones, Maria Rushka, for example, Rebecca Pauline, you can put in that category. I've seen Katie Haight, like Sarah Dove, often gets mentioned in that sort of vein as well. There are a lot of sim racing girls out there who are proving that this is not just that male-dominated sport, which a lot of people expect this to be. I think it's fantastic to see that representation here at the highest level, and actually really good to see just how diverse sometimes sim racing can be.
Yeah, and especially also in the German area, there is Laura Luft, or Laura Air as she calls herself online, and she's driving pretty well, and she's also driving in real life cars, so that's definitely a plus for both ways.
It certainly is a major plus at the moment as this race does look to continue. Back though to the battle for 4th position overall between Evolution Racing Team and VRS Coanda Simsport, and that number 8 certainly does have some fantastic drivers they can put in. They've got Jorn Jens, Sage Karam and Philip Stam. Well, just compare that to the number 1 machine that you could put in at any given point in time. Matt Bakker, Mitchell de Jong, and I've heard him a little bit later on in this event, maybe Martin Kroenke could even grace his presence into this race.
Yes, I think he will. But at the moment, we see the battle here. Well, let's not tell a battle, but you know, the overtaking battles with Joshua K. Rogers here, and it does look a little bit. What? Just be careful, guys. You don't want to do it here. Ooh, they did it.
They did, and they got around without really too many worries at all. But now this comes the next big worry. Josh Rogers effectively becomes the cork in the bottle right now, and it's very difficult for Ethan Grigol to get around. Of course, 2 drivers who know each other incredibly well from the likes of the V8 Supercars Online Premiere Series, which is shown with our good friends over at SimSpeed TV, and it's the likes of all these different series where drivers build up that knowledge, that database of racing against other people. It's not just the fact that you race against the same 19 other drivers, like, for example, they would do in Formula 1. You've got to build up a database of knowledge of maybe 300, 400, 500 different drivers that you could race at any given point in time. And for us commentators sometimes, Tobias, it's a case of working out 1,000 drivers, 2,000 drivers, keeping that in the memory bank.
Not only in the memory bank, but I had to up my RAM actually, just to have all the tabs open about the drivers and their history of driving here and all their statistics. So that is quite a challenge, especially in those enduros where 3 or 4 people are sitting in the cars, sometimes even more for 24-hour races, and then you have a field of 50, 55, and at the end of the race, you know a lot of people who are in there, but then it's over already, and it starts again next race, and then you have a different lineup maybe.
Exactly, and this is where that ever-changing revolving door sometimes of sim racing does come into play. Silly season, as it were, with a lot of changes, a lot of drivers switching teams. No more important, I think, than the NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series and the first ever draft that they managed to have over 10 years of experience. And, you know, you can talk about how this sim keeps getting more realistic, more realistic, more realistic as well. It is worth noting that the first ever winner of a NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series race was the legendary Dale Earnhardt Jr.
Yeah, I mean, you see where it all goes.
You do. You absolutely do. And it's coming into the fact, like, for example, these tracks are laser scanned to almost millimeter accuracy, you can say sometimes. I've heard this anecdote said a lot of times when it comes to racing on iRacing, and that is, if you were to scan effectively a 2-pence piece into the simulator and you would drop that in, it would fall through because it's that precise that it would find itself probably the only thing that wouldn't be able to stay up. Sometimes it's fantastic to see just how much effort can be put in. It's not just the fact that you put that effort in, you learn the tracks. You actually see people taking their efforts from the simulator and translating that into the real world and trying to understand it through things like fun laps, for example. Nürburgring hot laps, especially around that Sim Expo time, was so key and so crucial to a lot of people wanting to attend that event, to find out, okay, is my experience in the simulator exactly like it would be if I tried it in real life?
Yeah, I mean, you see every time people sit in the simulator and then they bring the personal car to the track days or open road days to the Nordschleife. But especially about Bathurst, I've seen the video when they virtualized the track. There was a V8 supercar driver talking about the steering points and how they convert into the simulation. And, you know, going up the hill, let me check exactly where it is, just before Brock Skyline, you know, where you have to almost touch the wall, where we just had the accident with the 26 car before. Going into that turn, you have a drainage cover on the right, and this is your turning point.
And it's that sort of detail that often gets seldom overlooked in terms of just how much effort and how much work gets put into simulators like these. And I have to say a big shout out to all the guys over at iRacing headquarters in Boston for the work that they've been able to produce over 10 years, and the likes of course of Kevin Bobbitt and all the rest of the crew, Steve Myers and the likes of Doug and all of them out there who have done so much work to get themselves ready. I can't name them all off the top of my head, I'm not that brilliant at the moment, but still got some great racing action, some gaps still increasing further and further, others pretty much abstaining, staying exactly the same. Still, Commander versus Evolution Racing Team stays the closest battle out on circuit, and they actually have to be careful about how they battle this one here, Tobias, because not too distant in the future is Florian Reuter and Williams Gym Esports here, 6th position, 2 seconds down the road.
Yeah, these 2 seconds, they can close very quickly, as we've seen before. But also one of you who forgot is Drew, who does these amazing trailers. Yeah, and I think I've never seen anyone else that can work with the cameras around the track like he can.
No, I absolutely agree, and the work that he does as well to try and stay communal with the sim racing community, likes of Nim Cross as well, Alex Gustafsson, and the iRacing highlights that we've seen as well, the top 10s. A lot of things come down to top 10s and, you know, what's the biggest moment, and actually it is these sorts of races that come up and say all of these top 10s do well. I mean, it even comes to the likes of, say, some Twitch streams like Matt Malone, for example, who get out there and actually put in so much effort to get out there, get streams, get clips, get views, and a lot of drivers have this understanding of this is what I want to be, this is what I want my sim racing to be. And actually I would probably say, and this is going to be a very controversial point for a lot of people, I think sim racing is so much better than real world racing, mainly because you actually get to see people's faces, you actually get to see the expressions of what people are driving like. That interpersonal relationship, with that connection that you get with other people is seldom found when it comes to the real world of racing. You appreciate someone for their talent, but you can appreciate someone so much more for their personality when they have themselves the ability to showcase in front of them.
I wouldn't totally confirm that. I would give it both its credibility, because I like real motor racing as well as sim racing. But the thing with sim racing is you are so much closer to the thing. I mean, look at how we can set the cameras. I mean, we can go everywhere, anywhere. We always have a camera on every car, you could say, from every different angle. And I think this is a bonus that we in sim racing have, as you've seen in, for example, for the Porsche Leipzig event. We had 10 rigs, the drivers were sitting behind their rigs, and then we had cameras at their faces, and in front of their rigs there were like TV screens where you could see the drivers driving, and as you said, all the emotions happening, and it was very, very nice to see. And let's see what that brings for the future, offline or LAN events.
And talking about that future, it seems that Alexander Voss's future is full of Joshua Anderson as they head out to the Forest Elbow and push forward down the Conrad Straight under the Jim Beam Bridge, the Gene Bin Bridge, it seems that I wanted to say there, and now underneath that Mitsubishi Fuso Bridge as well. Anderson closing that gap down to within a tenth and a half, within a tenth. Does he look? Oh, he's leaving it a little bit late there to lunge down the inside. He's had one attempt that has been successful there already, but not quite a second. Got a nose down the inside, but was unable really to commit and put the power down. And just see there a little bit of weaving as well, just to maybe get a little bit of understanding there of how the car is feeling from Alexander Voss. He is so desperate just to find himself an ability to escape and to break away, and he's just not quite got it at the moment, just being consistently harassed by the Vendaval car behind.
Yeah, and then you have these GT3 cars pushing as well, so this will be interesting. Yep, he's leaving that Ferrari by, who's in the slipstream, so that was perfectly planned by the 22 car, I guess, to give this Ferrari a little pull just to create the gap in between.
And how iconic is it that I get to say, do a Max Verstappen at Monaco, where almost use the vehicle as a pick to find a way through if you can. Wasn't able to do it with PJ Sturgis and the Inex machine, but there is still TT Racing Red just behind, who is effectively 3 laps down on them and will be trying to unlap himself in comparison. But just look how close up through the mountain the push is from Anderson as he's all over the curb trying to find just any little bit of advantage. He's probably dropped a 10th by just trying to be that aggressive, and that will probably force no overtakes here down this fantastic sweeping section, and ultimately through the dipper. Anderson is just on the outside looking in. You can see how much he's pushing.
Yeah, coming out of the dipper, you see the car sliding just a little bit, and now here you have to brake in a straight line as carefully as possible. It's like touching the brakes a little bit, just literally, because these guys are stepping into the brake pedals, but it's mostly like just slightly touching it with your thumb.
Yeah, it's almost like you've got to be so delicate with these sorts of drives, as Anderson again looks to try and open up a move. Big, wide, arcing line from Alexander Voss, trying to use all of his road tax and maybe even a little bit more of that as he tries to push forward, and has a lot of people watching this one. Of course, you've seen so many drivers start to make that push over to Williams over all sorts of platforms, but suddenly that battle just dissipates as Justin Tipton, normally favoured for being in a Skip Barber more rather than being in a GT3 machine, does make his way through and open out the battle just a little bit further, which is probably to the ire of Joshua Anderson, who's going to make a clear point of how much you've held me up by just pulling alongside and going, you know, I can go quicker than you in a straight line. Please don't bother trying to hold me up. It's now the 33 and the 83 begin to have their own scrap, and this is a great little scrap here as Dane Warren has just lost the position actually in the Astro Gaming Ultra C Sports machine to the Champs iRacing 12 Hours Bathurst car, which does have Victor Preto behind the wheel. Champs iRacing, Spanish-based team based out of around the Real Betis sort of area of Spain. I believe it's somewhere on the south, if my memory serves me correct. But really, Victor Preto, former pro driver, certainly has himself a lot of ability behind him and made very quick work there of Dane Warren.
Yeah, and then overall, as I always say, because statistics only tell half of the story, they're about the same level, talking about iRacing. But on this particular circuit, we have 10 hours to find out. And I would say, oh, there was a Porsche sideways, was it? That
Heinrich, that's the leader.
That was the leader, yeah, as I thought.
That was the leader, and that's a big, big mistake that has come out of absolutely nowhere for the race leader, Heinrich, who had the mistake, of course, at the Porsche Sim Racing Trophy at the Nürburgring, finds himself in the wall coming off of the chase, just grabbed a bit too much curb, effectively Tony Hawk's his way along for a little bit, and Laurent Heinrich, all of a sudden, now finds himself, yes, still leading, but now vulnerable to Coanda, who will now hear that there's been a mistake, see the gaps come down, and go, oh, hello, time to push.
And also time to push now for them, for Heinrich. So we've seen the replay from one angle, but look here. At first, it looks fine. Okay, he loses a little bit too much curb here, has to save the car, but then he gets too much on the outside. There is where he lost it. You get the rear on the outside, you get no traction control on these cars, you spin it around, and with the wall being close as it is here, yeah, 3-point turn, and then back to the race, hopefully.
Back to the race, still in the lead. Such was the gap that had been manifested by the Williams Esports Chill Blast machine, but all of a sudden, Virtual Racing School Coanda Sim Sport find themselves in a very good position to start closing down that gap. And right now, Javier Guerrera, team boss at Williams Esports, is looking on and going, that's not quite what we had in the plans. And it was very telling that wasn't what was in the plans, as this race looks to push on in towards the end of the second hour. So right now, has to be said here, Josh Rogers has to push, has to keep the pressure on. It's the Alain Prost It's the Alain Prost versus Ayrton Senna sort of dynamic that you see. Doesn't matter if you're 40 seconds behind or if you're 2 seconds behind. You push. You force your opponents into mistakes.
Yeah, and even the lap before it happened, Rogers was already fast, about half a second. I mean, you can clearly see, okay, he was stuck behind traffic a little bit, but he is now back on. I mean, you know, it's a thing with the head. It's a psychology thing. Because if you know, okay, he did a mistake, okay, we're getting closer again. We gained 10 seconds on that guy. That really helps you, even pushing more and more over your limit.
It certainly does, and now everyone's been just starting to look at this and maybe just think that this race is not as simple as you think it is. You could be out controlling the race by a long shot, and I think someone who would be looking at that actually even more than what Williams and Coanda would be is actually your 71 leaders, Pure Racing Team Blue, looking to go back-to-back here at Bathurst over 2 years, and Maximilian Venig, who is arguably the coolest customer when it comes to racing behind these sorts of vehicles, he would have just got notice of, okay, that's a Porsche and it's the Porsche leader that's gone wrong. It means that they could very easily be next.
Yep, but just we shouldn't start with commentators' curse here,
oh, no,
or producers' curse as we had it in Daytona. Camera switches to a car loses it.
Yes, and that's something that I believe nobody wants to be getting into, especially us as the 22 and the 6 continue their battle for third in the Porsche category. Still Alexander Voss holding off Joshua Anderson, who's probably trying to play the fuel save game, and I'm not surprised here at this stage because they just can't afford to get themselves involved into any sort of incident that really puts them in trouble as they are all over the curb trying to let through that very similar sized BMW of Jari Lothari's Glacier Racing Duo machine get through. But just like this, Josh Anderson is just probably erring on the side of caution, and as an Australian sim racer where Bathurst effectively becomes, you know, that big congregation point for all Australian sim racers, you know better than anyone else, if you are in that Australian community, you've seen more of this racing than anyone else. This track bites, and erring on the side of caution sometimes probably the best way and the best strategy to move forward.
Yeah, it surely is. As we are approaching the next pit window, normally it should be about 60 minutes a stint, with some guys pitting already 55 minutes into the stint or even more. And we are about to see a full pit lane again, at least with those guys who are on the second stint of their tires. But the track temps are still down at 19 degrees Celsius as we approach 8 AM track time.
Yeah, very, very true, and we are seeing now how that difference certainly comes in. We have seen a vehicle on pit road and effectively retired, and that is the Guild of Australian Young Stars team, which has not got any drivers in, so that might be another position that the red line car is going to be picking up over the near future as they try and get a number of small positions here and there. But a few worries for a couple of teams, a couple of drivers who are trying to find a way through. Slow at the moment is Jose Lobo, and the Zenith 24-hour car just behind that. That was Red Face Racing by MXS Engineering, just scything away past Justin Tipton without really much remorse there. Just threw the vehicle down the inside, and Tipton, left on the outside, was probably left between a rock and a hard place.
Oof. Yeah, I mean, we're seeing aggressive maneuvers 2 hours into the race, and we still have to think about it as we see the replay here again. It's not over yet for anyone. I mean, even if you're 1 or 2 laps down, just push it, but be careful not to crash too hard.
Yeah, you have to be careful not to crash too hard indeed. A lot of drivers have got it very, very wrong so far today, and not many more want to go through as the 43 machine dives down onto pit road. That's Logitech G Old C Sports, and a driver change comes in as Vedran Krauj gets in behind the wheel, as does come in the Evolution Racing Team 227. Jamie McKnight stays in behind the wheel. So we're just hitting that pit stop window coming in once again for your GT3 machines, and it looks like maybe a change coming in for Coanda's number 1 as well over this next stint too. So it's up to drivers when they choose when do they want to change their driver, but of course the longer you put that driver in, the more likely they are to suffer from things such as fatigue, tiredness, maybe errors creep in a little bit more. Last place you want errors, this track right here.
Yeah, that's true, but you know, also there's a thing of drivers. Imagine you didn't drive for 2 or 3 hours and then have to get into the car and be at the pace directly when you come out of the pits. You get thrown in the shark tank of cars that is coming up the mountain straight.
Yes, and there is a massive shark tank, and it is surrounding Jose Lobo once again. Tipton, Michaels for hashtag R4R Esports. You got William Levesque there for Civic Inex Racing Black in the mix, along and trying to stay with the 46 and Glacier Racing Duo. Probably not getting much help then up the mountains. They passed the tennis court on the right hand side. That's a beautiful house over there. Houses on the mountain typically go for quite a bit of money, it has to be said, around here, and I do envy people who get to basically have a racetrack on their doorstep. But for the moment, the 22 and the 6 again continuing their battle, and this is just behind them, Voss and Joshua Anderson, so they have just been behind this little scrap as Levesque finally gets through and tries to chase down Lothari, who's going to get stuck behind Philip Myshine in the X5 Racing machine. So it seems that no matter where you look, there's always another vehicle that comes into the fray, and no more is that more important right now than watching Vendaval, because they have closed up a ton down the mountain.
Yeah, that's really true. I mean, we can see here now the run down the straight, and I don't think he will try something this lap around, but probably next lap there will be attacks.
There may be attacks next time by. It depends on what they want to do in terms of the strategy card that gets put into play, and I think a lot of drivers are just waiting for that pit stop window. When is the right time to come down in and make the stops for Williams? They hold on through the chase, now heading to Murray's Corner, the final corner out on circuit. This 90-degree left-hander down to just 93 kilometers an hour before putting the power back down. A little heavy over the curb, and they should be okay to keep on pushing. We've seen a few more drivers come in. Glacier Racing Duo is one of them, as well as, I believe, yeah, that should be it then. Glacier Racing Duo come down in onto lane. They are looking to make their stop.
Yep, the stop is surely happening. The Glacier Racing Duo, let's see if they take ties. They should this time. I think they didn't take ties the first time around. I mean, triple stinting on that mountain? Not sure if that works out.
Well, a lot of people aren't sure, as down in comes TT Racing Silver to make their stop, as does the race leader Maximilian Venig. Driver change for Pure Racing Team Blue, and it's the man who won every World Tour event in 2018. He was absolutely faultless within the team. It's Jonas Vollmeyer, who just last week became just 2 seconds away from taking a victory away from Movano in LMP1 for the Sports Car Open. But now it seems that Vollmeyer has now just got the consolidation job to do here when it comes to the Bathurst 12.
And they are changing tyres, so Vollmeyer will get fresh tyres, will get a nice and a full fuel tank, so he can be pushing hard right now as soon as he gets out of the pits. There go the tyres. So that will start right now, and I wonder what his lap times will be around here.
We will see. Of course, this track is starting to heat up a little bit, up to 20 degrees now, track temperature here, with winds blowing in from the east direction at around 6 kilometers an hour. So a light breeze coming across the mountain, not really too much to affect some of these vehicles, just waiting for Jonas Vollmeyer to get out and away and back onto the racing circuit. But it seems that, at least for the moment, not really too much to worry about for him, and in terms of that gap, already out and already away by a pretty comfortable margin at that. They're having a very good work, or very good push at this stage to go through, with most of the drivers as well looking to have that charge. Just keep an eye out on some of the teams that haven't been doing as well. Excite Energy, for example, are 13 laps down. Adam McNally, the Geordie, in behind the wheel, having a good job of running at the moment, getting some experience underneath his belt. Emily Jones still out there for Trans-Tasman Racing. And, of course, right now, we've got ourselves a lot of drivers or a lot of people who've been trying to keep good attention on Team Redline, who have had, safe to say, a torrid time of things at the moment at Mount Panorama. But They've got a fresh engine in that vehicle. They've managed to fix everything together, get back out and going. And let's take you then, RaceSpot TV, fan immersion for the moment as the number 13 machine has decided to come down onto the lane. That is Vendaval Sim Racing White, who have decided it is time to come down and change drivers to Santeri Kekkonen as Takkonen comes in, changes to Jorn Jens in the number 8 machine as well. Let's go on board with that number 16 machine that we said that we were going to go on to. This is the one that you all wanted. Team Redline, Lando Norris behind the wheel. Let's go on board. This is how a Formula 1 driver does iRacing. Well, it seems that Lando Norris can't keep himself out of the excitement at the moment. Just what you've seen over the course of the onboard fan immersion, we've just seen a big instant for your third place Porsche, or fourth place Porsche, sorry, in category, that being the Vendaval Sim Racing Yellow number 6 of Joshua Anderson. This is the replay then of what happened when they were up at the top of the mountain, because a big worry came in as we got a very long time before we get there. It was right at the top of the skyline, so you can see Anderson in front coming up the hill, and there's going to be a massive moment which sees Anderson effectively have to take a turn. Tobias, this one pretty much came out of left field.
Yeah, I mean, you see it here, he comes around, this still looks fine going towards skyline, but then he will lose it down through the acid right now, as I don't know what happened there. Did he want to leave more space and then was braking too late?
Lost on brakes.
Yep, and then boom!
Oh, up, over, out, and that's a tow there, because he would have been hurtling down the mountain. Not much you can do. On board with Vendaval Sim Racing Yellow's Joshua Anderson then over the course of this one. So he gets wide, goes to hit the brakes, and he's just losing it. It's almost like he locked the rear axle there as he tried to hit the brakes, and up, over, and goodbye. It was ultimately the response to that. So that has completely changed things over the course of this event. It now means that Apex Racing UK's Fluke 49, who have had a very quiet race, now find themselves in third, but now the battle for fourth overall starts hotting up, because Evolution Racing Team have just found a way through with Govan Keeney behind the wheel, getting around Jorn Jens, and that was 4-4. So Govan Keeney, arguably someone who has had more than his fair share of incidents over the course of his sim racing career, has got past Jorn Jens and now finds the Evolution Racing Team up to fourth, 15 seconds off of Vendaval White in third.
And you've seen the not happy 22 car there flashing the number 8 of Jorn Jens. So I'm not sure that is to tell that his rear lights are not working. I think this it has a different reason.
It is, and I think it's the reason of you sort of affected my line a little bit, and I'm not too happy about that. But Williams Esports Razor have themselves probably about a good third of a lap here advantage over Apex Racing UK's Jamie Fluke team, and that Jamie Fluke-based team at the moment is just Jamie Fluke. So for the time being at least, it seems that there will be no change for the Northern Irishman, who will find himself running a pretty strong effort in the early goings. And sometimes it's not about how aggressive or in the spotlight you are. Sometimes the best drivers don't get any camera time at all. That's just the way it goes.
Yep, and but he needs that at least a second driver, and of course we having the fair share rule here. So if you're two drivers, yeah, the other one has to drive at least a quarter of what the first driver did.
Yes, and that's what I think a lot of drivers are going to have to be seeing. Of course, the driver fair share rule comes into play here at the 12 Hours of Bathurst. And of course that means that you must have at least two drivers in the vehicle, and they must share an allotted fair amount of time in that vehicle, and that roughly equates to about 1/15 share, so about 40 minutes here and there that you start to see as a quote fair share for drivers.
Yep, and fair share is a good thing, so you can't just send in your best drivers and keep the worst driver of your team in for 2 or 3 laps. It's like they have it in real life. You have a minimum lap time, for example, in the Pro-Am class, for a minimum drive time for example, the bronze driver.
Exactly, and I think a lot of drivers understand that they need to be up at a certain level, and a lot of drivers have to showcase just what they are made of and just how they can battle and how good they can battle as well. Battle going on inside, or for the top 10, sorry, overall. You've got Frostmaster by TX3 and their new boy Johan Hath behind the wheel. He's up against Yanis Chodakis for Hellenic Racing as the 88 tries to hunt down the 3 in this battle, and just behind them, of course, Simacube, Inex Racing Black, and now Jack Sedgwick behind the wheel. And Jack Sedgwick, who really has been the star of this IRacing team over the last year or so, has really stepped up to the plate, filled the shoes, the void of people who weren't quite there, and has really shown that he does know how to make an overtake, or many, when it comes to races like these.
Yeah, but Nylander behind Jack Sedgwick, he knows as well how to overtake, and he's closing in as well. But we're still looking at Giannis Chodakis, who is at the rear of the Thrustmaster by TX3 car, and who is closing in on these long straights. I mean, you remember Conrad Straight is about 1.9 kilometers long.
It is, and it's a long time and a lot of overtaking chance that you can find on an incredibly long straight like that. But up the hill they will charge for their 67th time around the mountain. It seems that Johan Hart is going to have a little bit of not much help in front of him, and that is in the form of Jamie Fluke as they head through that big left-hander of McPhillamy Park. Gets checked up, and there's a check up there from Chodakis, who was not prepared to go too wide through Skyline. I don't blame him at that point. Maybe was an opportunity to make that move, but my goodness, you need to have maybe a bit of fortitude to go and make that sort of move.
Yeah, and I think his car just got heavier by a ton, if you know what I mean, during that situation.
No, I completely get what you mean. I think everyone else does, but for the time being, he's hoping that extra ton is going to be a bit more downforce that he gets heading through the downhill section. And Fluke not giving much room to Johan Hart there as they effectively try and pick a line through. Is there a look down the inside? Very bold on the brakes goes Chodakis. Has he gone in too deep? Here's a chance at a cutback coming from Hart. He'll look to try and pick it up to Murray's corner. Has to go the long way round to make this one happen, but ultimately runs out of chance, and that is a good move from Giannis Chodakis, the Greek driver.
Yeah, but you have to watch out with these movebacks to the racing line when defending, because in my opinion there is something that is tolerated, you know, some way, but moving across again, even though you know it won't be anything for the other driver, can be very dangerous and leads to 4X.
It certainly leads to 4X, but there is nothing really in the rules that say that they are not allowed to do that. Of course, they run under the iRacing Sporting Code, and in terms of Sporting Code, in terms of conditions, I know that Will Vincent here at RaceBot TV is going to have to be reading some terms and conditions after the New England Patriots won in the Super Bowl, but you have to look at the iRacing Sporting Code. There's nothing here to say, like the FIA rules, for example, you're only allowed one line change when it comes to a straight, so you can weave around as much as you like, you can break the toe however way you want, you can serpentine all the way that you want. As long as it gets the job done, it gets the job done.
Yep, that's true, and I'm having the Sporting Code open, and there are a lot of things like MPR, safety rating, promotion and demotion, but the most important thing is the fair driving, what I call it. So the one move rule, for example.
Yes, and that one move rule becomes very important. In on pit road is VRS Coanda Sim Sports #1. They are the last to come in and make that stop, and in comes the Red Bull Rallycross former driver Mitchell de Jong behind the wheel. And de Jong, someone who effectively really has stepped up to the plate over the last year or so, has become Mr. Dependable over at Coanda. Every series he's been putting in, he is the first Rallycross World Champion, and that was no surprise in terms of his ability. But on top of that, we saw he was right up there fighting for the IRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series crown, and was also fighting as well when it came to VRS GT and these styles of vehicles.
Now, talking about tires in the Porsches, they have to do a lot more of trail braking. They are sliding definitely a little bit more than the GT free cars, because the Cup cars, they don't have ABS, they don't have traction control, so it's all down to your right and left foot.
It is all down to that right and left foot, and just how difficult sometimes that can be. Out and away goes Mitchell de Jong, as in behind is Jamie Fluke, and now Excite iRacing and Adam McNally getting in behind the wheel. I like Excite iRacing. I think that they're a good little team moving forward. side, of course, they effectively boosted themselves their way through the likes of Robert Hartley, who, for those who don't know Robert Hartley, surprisingly is second best in IRacing. I think second or third best in IRacing. He's got something like 9,800 iRating or something, and he's predominantly known, Tobias, as an MX-5 driver. So farming works.
Farming does work, and I remember, wasn't there one driver with or the only driver with 10,000 iRating from PRT?
Yes, Maximilian Benecke, 10K Benecke. They say.
You know, when you see him in real life, you wouldn't believe it, because he looks like the guy next door that is pretty chilled, you know, which all the neighbors and old people like, because he's very nice to everyone. But when he's on track, he's blasting.
He is absolutely blasting. He is amazing. We've got our eyes on Jack Sedgwick, though. He's under pressure as JJ Newlander will look to try and close down the gap then in that pretty much torpedo-like BMW, which has been making the rounds and making some stellar overtakes today. So can Newlander do what Latari did a little bit earlier on, and Jack Sedgwick could become the very next victim, and this one is for 12th position out on circuit, and really Newlander is just chomping at the bit to go and make a move.
Yep, he's just waiting for the upper pass. I'm very happy actually not to have seen a Porsche move in first elbow yet, because it can go right, but it mostly doesn't.
Well, we haven't seen too many Forest Elbow overtakes so far today, and the one Forest Elbow bit we saw in the opening hour ended in absolute calamity. So these drivers, the last on the leading lap. Oh, there was a look to the outside there from Newlander. It got covered off very heavily, I had to say, there from Jack Sedgwick. I didn't think there was much room or any overlap or anything, but he certainly made his intentions clear by moving to the outside and almost clipping the wall out of the quarry corner. So Jack Sedgwick here, I think he's pushing a little bit. He's starting to be a little bit hot under the collar.
Oh yeah, he did. He wiggled through that section there. That was a near miss for him, so he's on the edge right now with this Ferrari here. You see him almost clipping the wall, and the rear wall. That mirror would have been gone by now.
It should have been gone, it could have been gone, it would have been gone, but now there's 5 vehicles in front which are not going to be gone when they come down the hill, and they've got to be uber worried about that one, as it seems that we've got some big issues, and it's in the form of a Coanda Porsche, because that is technical, and goodbye Mitchell de Jong. That effectively gives Williams a free pass to a 1-2 at this stage.
Oh, that's unfortunate, but this is the technical difficulties that can occur in virtual racing. I mean, and then, of course, you need the toe back of the car depending on where you are on track. Then you need to get another driver in, and that could mean +1 lap.
+1 lap, indeed. De Jong has had these issues before. I think the big issue where it happened was Spa-Francorchamps vehicle's just gone off, though, and that is Travis Schwenke for Excite iRacing, and I was saying how much I like them. I'm not sure I like them even more when they're finding themselves in tyres. Let's get a replay. Heavy over the curve, second part of the chase, and it's a looping mistake, and bang, buried into the side of the tyres, and able to keep it going and get it back out and racing again. But that side looks pretty dented after a shunt like that.
Yep, this is not the crash you want to see happening if you're the driver, or even the guys who are going to drive later on, because they have to fiddle with that broken suspension later on.
They certainly do, but what is important to note, though, is that they did have that hit on the side of their vehicle. In terms of an impact, a side-on impact to Bias, so much better than a head-on impact like, say, Kirchhoff had.
Yeah, but you know, the more sideways you get, the worse the suspension damage is, as we are watching the battle with 88 and the free car. The free is now approaching the rear, as it looks like. Yep, it is, and that's the Johan Hart in the Thrustmaster by TX free car, following Hellenic Racing down the S's.
Yes, and trying to get back into play as quickly as possible, getting another move done as they're behind the Coanda Simsport #1 back out on circuit. New driver Mac Backham gets in behind to try and stem the bleeding caused by technical issues for Mitchell de Jong, but at the moment it is Giannis Trodakis trying to hold off Johan Haaf, who has not fallen away after that previous overtake done by Trodakis. See now how that's a little bit like Piccadilly Circus. You've got to try and find a way to get through, and Scott Michaels there, not really too much he can do get through, and that was late from Johan Haaf, but he made his way through and just pushing a little bit wide there on the exit as well. He's got to be careful about those little 1Xs keep increasing and becoming more and more prevalent as this race goes on. Drivers do not want to get into the vehicle where they've got maybe 5 instant points to survive 3 hours.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, at the moment, I think the leader in incidents is the Astro Gaming Altus Esports car with Warren at the wheel. They are having 18 of 100 maximum allowed incidents.
Yes, and I think they have to be very, very cautious about the way that they accrue all of these incidents. But at this track, sometimes many people say that you should never get to 100, mainly because of just how difficult it is to pick up an incident unless you're having terminal damage somewhere out on track. But let's just focus a moment on something a little bit different. The battle for second position overall in your event. Not close in terms of right next to each other side-by-side standards, but Santeri Kekkonen has been putting in some very consistent lap times over the last 4 or 5 laps or so, and has been just quietly whittling away down that gap. 2:02.7 that last time by wasn't helpful, mainly because a lot of traffic to deal with. The likes of Niels Koch, Piers Koki was one of them, the likes of Jamie McKnight, and also the Probatum car of Ruben Santos to deal with. Not the best lap, but ultimately Kekkonen within that 5-second window to give Altus a scare at this stage.
Yeah, that is scary. And you know who is watching because he won't be driving, and that is Bo Albert, who can't drive today, but he is watching the race. And we talked before, probably Altus will put everything, when everything goes wrong, they will put it on Bo.
They normally do, and of course team boss Simon Feigl will be trying to get in behind that Logitech G Altus Esports car in just a little bit. He's seen Andrew Carl in the vehicle, he's seen Vedran Krausch get in the vehicle, one of their newer signings added to the team. Their next big challenge is, can the team boss get anything out of the vehicle and claw down a gap which is extended now to nigh on 28 seconds for Jonas Vollmeyer, who has been just arrow consistent over his last few laps or so. You talk about his discrepancy between lap times. His worst lap has been a 2:01.2, and his best lap so far has been a 2:04. So that difference, really, not much at all, about maybe a second in between it with traffic to deal with too. Vollmeyer is just proving that he is a maestro at dealing with traffic from the front and making things work his way.
Yes, and making things work his way is Lando Norris actually, because he's unlapping himself pretty hard already. He's still at P27, but he's having a blast overtaking that Mercedes pretty hard here. So he's still a lot of laps back, because they had in total about, how much was it, 70 minutes of repair?
Something around those lines. Certainly had a long amount of repair, being full 38 laps off of the leaders. So they've had probably about, at least by my maths, an hour and a half's worth of repairs so far in this event. That's how much they've been struggling. So it seems that they're trying to get things back on track here and trying to get themselves back going, and they have had that good run, and they have had that ability to go out there to push and to showcase just exactly what they can be made of over the course of this racing action. But the question becomes for Redline, what next? Because you can have this flashy lineup of drivers like Verstappen and Norris and Nicky Katzberg and all the rest of it. But where's the bread and butter coming? Is it going to be coming from iRacing? It hasn't for the last 2 years, 3 years maybe. They haven't had that suspected dominant section that they've had over the course of, say, the early 2010s, when Gregor Hutu took 5 world championships. I think it's a different Redline. It's a different philosophy from Redline, and it's a different Dom Duhan, I think, who is a lot more wiser to every opportunity that he can get available to him. And maybe if it doesn't work in iRacing, then he's got to start thinking about, okay, is this the frontier that we're really the best at anymore?
Yeah, you know, there's two things. Do you want to leave the at the moment premier racing simulation that there is for online esport racing, or do you want to try something different because you can't get the hang? But what we know is, or what I know is, that for example, a Max Verstappen will come in about maybe 2 stints. So there's a possibility to see another name of that shiny names that you just mentioned in the car. But if you look at it this way, now it's an open wheeler, so Lando feels more comfortable.
Well, it is an open wheeler. You're certainly right by the way it looks, but it certainly doesn't look for a pretty sight, and that much I think has to be said at this point in time for the way that they've been racing. But at the moment, it seems that there's going to be not much change going on in terms of this stint. We've got still Thrustmaster by TX3 trying to stay with Hellenic, but ultimately they are starting to just drop back a little bit. So it becomes a case of just looking down the field and seeing certain teams and how they're standing out. And one of them that hasn't really been on the radar but has made positions has been TT Racing Silver, the number 9 machine. Piers Cocky is behind the wheel right now for them, but TT Racing really a team that makes its name in the Skip Barber 2K World Cup, presented by DES Simulations, which you can see, of course, on the iRacing Esports Network. Make sure you subscribe, and if you really want to, hit that bell icon. You might get a few notifications on when exactly we are going live as well. But TT Racing Silver, drivers like Philippe Bear, who have really shown what they're capable of. Tuan Tran, Justin Tipton, Diogo Francisco, all these drivers that come up and show that in a Skip Barber, they are completely unrivaled at the moment and have some fantastic racing action. But exploring, branching out a little bit, you don't often see it as much from TT Racing. They're always there in terms of these top split races to bias, but that pace isn't quite at that level where they can be overall challengers everywhere. And I don't expect that of them, but I do expect consistency, which they are showing.
Yep, consistency is key. I mean, you can as fast as a Lando Norris, you can as fast as especially PRT, but the most important thing is being fast while showing consistency, and that is both sides of the medal of the